So I decided to take a little stroll through a very recognizable part of the city for me. As you can see, this is where I am right now. You could call it the East Village of New York City. And I used to take a lot of dance classes over here. This is where I got my dance start, my start as a dancer, a ballet dancer. And these are the streets where I created these dreams where I thought I'd be a pretty big dancer. I thought that was gonna be my career as a child. And I was gonna be working my way up to being a professional dancer. And then later on I got into acting and I thought I'd be like a Broadway dancer. So what a perfect place to try to craft those kind of dreams. What better place to craft those kind of dreams besides New York? I mean, come on, just look at this place, This is where the city where dreams are made. If you can make it in New York, you can make it anywhere. But that's besides the point. I decided to take a little stroll through memory lane, and I realized one thing about me. I used to be a person who was very sentimental. I used to love thinking about the past, and I loved just keeping things that were in my childhood, keeping things that were in my youth close to me. And that included the streets of New York. Everybody loves New York. Everybody wants to visit New York at least one time in their life. Not me. Maybe I'm a little biased because I lived here my whole life. I've grown and raised here. You flew here, I grew here. That whole saying. And that kind of changed for me once I created my trip to Europe. Once I visited Europe, I think I got a whole new perspective of life that most people don't really get. And I'm still crafting a little philosophy of my own, whether it is better to be living in such a great place because there is competition all around you. And when you see competition, that motivates you to do better in life. But there is something to say about visiting more relaxed areas, more areas where people are able to enjoy life. And that's not to say people aren't enjoying life here, but once you live here long enough, you start to see the problems and the crevices, the little cracks that most people probably wouldn't see if they were just visiting for a day or two. Now that I've grown older, I've grown a lot older, and when I was a teenager, I used to love walking in such an area like this. I used to love just strolling through these streets and just taking in the scenery, and I loved it. It was amazing for me, the city that never sleeps. Nowadays it does sleep a little because ever since the pandemic, the pandemic sort of forced stores to change their hours of running, and after the pandemic, they sort of kept those hours for some stores and some locations. It's kind of weird, you can't really hold the moniker as the city that never sleeps and, have stores closing, at midnight, at 10 p.m., it's kind of strange, Some bars even close at weird hours. But, the city that never sleeps, living here your whole life, and you start to see the problems with it. And after I took my trip to Europe, I think I gained a whole new perspective. I got to meet people, be around people that spoke different languages, people who lived completely different lives than you. And, not completely different because, we are starting to become more of a globalized society. So you start to see some similarities that, wouldn't be if we weren't so advanced in technology and we weren't so connected globally as the world continues to advance. But I think I don't like I don't like walking through the streets as I once did as a kid, walking through these streets specifically. I walked by my old music school, my old dance school, where I learned how to dance, where I basically gained all the aspirations that I ever wanted in my life. And I think I could put my umbrella down now. But yeah, the city, these are basically the streets where I gained all that I ever wanted to dream of in my life as a child. And, where I basically got my start as, an aspirational person, trying to inspire people. But once I traveled to Europe and started experiencing like the newness of being in a different environment, it's kind of different from America, because but traveling to Europe wasn't the first time that I got to live in a new location. But comparing my move to Maryland, Baltimore, Maryland, another New York city, not New York, another American city, it just kind of feels too samey to New York a little bit. Kind of, everyone's the same, which is what is the internet doing for most parts of the world right now, most first world parts of the world, which is starting to make them feel samey to here as well. But I would say that before that ever actually happens, before that, that tradition that those other countries are lost, I believe it would be best to travel now more than ever, for you have less of a reason to just generally, like when you visit there, you might just be disappointed about how similar it is to where you are at home. And I really wouldn't want that. That's why I make it my mission to get people to travel as soon as possible rather than later. I made a video earlier where people are always in preparation mode, always trying to prepare for their travel to wherever they're trying to go. And my philosophy is just go. And you might not ever be able to travel for the reason that you initially tried to travel for. And when I did travel, previously, like when I was in my travel group, when I went to Scotland, the more English-speaking country did make it feel a little more like New York, especially London. Like London is basically British New York, I always say. But yeah, it did feel like London did want to try to be like New York in some ways. But when I went to Scotland, when I went to I think that was basically Scotland and London, since it is an English-speaking country, I guess it's a little more easier to assimilate to a westernized sort of culture. So it did feel more samey to America than in comparison to Bucharest, Romania, and Moldova and Ukraine. Like those were the cities where I really felt like, there's a lot more to life than initially alluding to when you are traveling and when you are choosing to pick a location. And it even got me thinking about my friend who just went to Japan, which perhaps I could probably do an interview on him there. I'm glad he went to Japan and not, London or some other English-speaking country. Although they do speak English in those locations, Romania, Ukraine, and even Japan, some parts, not as much as you'd probably be prepared for. But, go and travel, like choose a place that people aren't usually trying to go to. That's why I decided to go to Ukraine or Romania rather than, Paris, France, which, you know, that's like the main place that people are usually going to, you know, Italy, Rome, you know, Paris, France, the London Eye, you know, even though I went to London, that was a study abroad thing, so, you know, you can't really count that. But how should I end this video off? Travel. That's all I gotta really say. I know it took me a while to get this kind of video out. You know, I was really busy with a few other errands that I had to run in my life. Like I said in the beginning of the year video, you know, there's a lot of big things happening for me, and they're happening pretty quickly. I got a few side jobs that are going to be very fruitful for me in the coming future. But I'm going to talk about that in a future video. I just want to get this video out because I haven't done a video in a while. But yeah, if you like this kind of video, please leave a like and make sure you subscribe to get more videos like this. And I'll see you guys later.